Hi, everybody. This is Gabrielle Carteris, President of SAG-AFTRA.
And I'm David White, National Executive Director of SAG-AFTRA.
And we want to welcome you to the podcast. In this episode, we are talking about the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas. It's a massive annual event where developers, big and small, showcase their new technological and electronic innovations. I had the honor and the opportunity to attend the conference with a whole group of people from SAG-AFTRA and the Future of Work Commission. It was extraordinary.
The Future of Work Commission from the AFL-CIO?
Yes.
Yeah, I know. I was jealous because I couldn't attend this year. It sounded great this year.
It was amazing. David, we'll talk about all the technological advances that we're seeing out there. Some of it concerns us.
Absolutely.
That's something that we're going to talk about. That's why we were there. We want to understand exactly where technology is right now and where it's going, and we have to be ready to respond.
We do. The size and scope of the convention every year really is mind-blowing. It's really tremendous. And the fact that we go there and we have elected leaders go there, as well as some of our staff, is really helpful. It helps us to stay in touch with where technology is advancing and also where it could advance.
Right.
And having all of that information when we are in our strategic discussion about our contracts, about the operations of the union, about enforcement and organizing, it's really, really important. You were there and you had the chance to sit down with someone from the Consumer Technology Association, which is the trade association that owns the convention and that puts it on every year.
It was Michael Petricone, and he's the Senior Vice President of Government Affairs for CTA. So this was interesting to meet him. He's been with the organization since 1996.
Phew.
I said to him, my God, the technology and how it's exploded and changed since then must be just riveting. I mean, because it was really amazing things that we were seeing there that in terms of the future, it reminded me of Star Wars. So
I think 1996, that was still largely AOL Netscape days, right? Yeah. I mean, think
just
about
birthing.
Right, exactly. The innovations that have happened since then has really been phenomenal. I think we're going to play a little bit of that interview.
Yeah, let's play a little bit of it and then we can talk.
Great.
Thank you for being here, Michael, with us. I've been walking around. It's stunning to see the technology that's out there right now that I'm just being introduced to. You are embedded in it. Why don't you just give us a little bit of background on CES, what it is and why it's so popular?
Sure. So CES is the global meeting place for the technology industry. We have nearly 2 million square feet of extraordinary technologies. We generally have around 180,000 attendees, 60,000 of them from abroad. But the reason I think it's exciting is CES is the place where anybody can come and show their idea, their new innovation to the world. We have a whole area called Eureka Park, and it's over 1,000 entrepreneurs, over 1,000 startups that are looking for funding, and we deliberately sell them booths at a very low cost, right, below market cost, because we want them there, right? And you go to any booth and you're talking to the founder and she's betting her life on this idea. And we have so many stories of entrepreneurs who maxed out their credit cards and put their product in the back of the car.
Into it, right?
Put everything into it.
Their cars,
right, maxed out their credit cards, drove across country to Las Vegas, set up their technology. And then they were discovered by a founder or a larger company or a buyer, and their life was changed.
As exciting as it is, it's also frightening. How do you see the future in terms of helping the industries thrive while helping also the people who work within these industries as technology, with the advent of technology and maybe replacing some of their work? How do you see the laws in protecting those individuals?
I look at it a couple of ways. First of all, technology is inherently disruptive. It changes your way of doing things, and disruption change is difficult, right, for everybody. But what you tend to find is, especially with technology and the content industry, you end up creating new platforms and new technologies that help you monetize and reach new consumer groups. So in the end, everybody thrives. Even with the motion picture industry. If you go back to when the Betamax was introduced, there was a huge amount of controversy, and some even tried to make the Betamax illegal. It was ruled legal by the Supreme Court by one vote. But the irony is that those in Hollywood who were worried about the Betamax were worried about the record button. They didn't want things recorded off the air. What consumers were really interested in was the play button, right, which opened up an entire new industry of pre-recorded media like tapes and DVDs, which still account for like a huge amount of the industry revenue stream. If it had been declared illegal, then this huge new revenue stream like never would have happened. And the point is, it's very difficult with a new technology. It's very difficult to figure out which way it's going to go. Here are things that we can do together. First of all, broadband. 19 million Americans don't have access to broadband services at all. So if we all agree that streaming is the future for this industry, that means 19 million Americans cannot get your stuff.
Right.
They can't get it. So we need to work together. And again, it's not like a traditional SAG issue perhaps, but to work together on initiatives to make sure that America, especially rural America, has broadband services. Tariffs. Right now we're in a trade war with China. But we are also seeing, because of the trade war, is there's a campaign in China to keep people from using American things, right? Discouraging them from watching our movies. So right now, domestic box office for you is less than a quarter of your revenue. For most movies, 30%, over 30% is international. So any kind of trade war is a bad thing. So we should work together to end that.
I hope that we can work on digital theft. As all these wonderful things that you're here supporting and the disruption that you're talking about, I'm really hoping that our industry and our members, our union, could work with you in terms of finding ways to also help protect our members and their work. Since that's an interest of yours, I'm really hoping that we can work down the road together to find ways to make sure that we're able to help protect the one product that is us. We're not a product on a shelf. It's really our images. So I'd love to get your take on ultimately if that's a possibility.
Right. I think what we've found over the years, and I've been in all kinds of discussions with you and your colleagues in Hollywood, but I think at the beginning, with the internet, there was a sense that it was like binary or either or. And somebody's got to win or somebody's got to lose.
No, right.
Right. But I think we've all come to the conclusion now that actually what this does is it grows the pie. And if we can have a thriving, dynamic content economy and technology economy, everybody wins.
Well, I think it's growing and thriving. Absolutely, I agree with you there. But also it's finding a way as the holograms, as the voice being captured, how they're able to utilize that. You can hear somebody once and then, you can use and manufacture their voice as a result. It's not going to be solved here today, but it's something to put in your mind, and that it is a concern particularly of performers around the world and artists. And I think it's worthwhile for us to have an ongoing conversation about it, because we already know the deep fakes that take place. We're looking at laws to help protect that. We don't want to create a scenario that can be dangerous. So maybe in supplement with what you're creating to find things to be able to do a catch.
In terms of technologies, there are a number of technologies on the floor here, which I think are very, very exciting for your members. So we've talked about how streaming is the future. And what you want to do is make sure that users can see your content in as many places as possible. One area that's going to be very interesting for you is self-driving cars, right? Because right now you're driving the car.
You have to focus on the road,
You're focusing on the car. And hopefully, and in terms of entertainment, hopefully you're not looking at video, you're listening to like music or something, right? With a self-driving car, it's totally different, right? And for many users, their option is going to be video. There's a company called Byton that is right outside, as a matter of fact, and they debuted a new model car with wraparound screens inside. So content creators and your members are going to have to think about, how do we take advantage of new content venues like automobiles?
And how do we make it so it's viewable, right? Because now you're changing the screen. It's not just the flat screen in front of you, but you're talking about surround viewing.
Yes, yeah, and speaking of which, and that's also true at home, right? And one trend you see, I think, is that TV watching at home is getting better and better. So more people are going to be watching your content, and they're going to be watching it from the comfort of their living rooms. You go to Samsung, they have modular TVs. You could place them anywhere and size them anyway, right? So that will totally rethink just how we use content and how we view content in the home. So new ways of consuming content in a very personalized way. You've got 8K television, which takes Ultra HD TV to the next level, 4 times the resolution of 4K Ultra TV.
The 3D hologram stuff is really riveting.
Yes, yeah, and especially with AR and VR to create an immersive entertainment experience. And I think what you're going to find, the trend you see clearly, is that VR and AR are going to become available to the masses, right? Huge opportunity for storytelling. I mean, imagine what your members can do with the technology that allows you to provide a truly immersive experience to the user. It's a little bit early for AR and VR. It's kind of like trying to predict where the internet was going to be like 15 years ago.
Right.
Like you couldn't do it, but you know it was going to be like hugely impactful. But I think for your members, being able to provide like a 360, incredibly immersive experience for your users is going to be transformative. Well, and let me give you another example for you in terms of the future. Black Mirror, the new Black Mirror episode that allows you to choose your own course through the movie and choose your own ending, which is hugely popular, right? So new technologies are going to allow like passive viewing experience if you want it, but also allow viewer agency. Another thing, right? Your industry is changing a lot. Right. It used to be, there were a small number of companies.
We had three networks.
Right. And now you're looking at like all these new platforms and players and even if you look at the most popular movies of the last few years, the most critically renowned, Netflix, Beast of No Nation, Amazon's Manchester by the Sea, Bird Box, right? And these are not coming from traditional players. And what that means is, more content being made by more people and more opportunities for your members.
I think that there's been actually a breakthrough of understanding. One of the reasons there's more excitement to this than ever before is that people are breaking through some of those fear barriers. I think that I really want us to be real about the fact that in that disruption, there are going to be some outcomes that won't be necessarily on the positive. And we want to be able to not condemn it, but we want to be prepared for that so that we can go and evolve in a way that we still thrive. Right? So it's about thriving, not just for the technology itself, but thriving for all of us. And I think that's what I was trying to say. So it is exciting. There are, things that we didn't expect would be positive that are positive, but inevitably there will be some downsides. And we need to also find ways to make sure we're protecting from that, or at least, when it comes up, willing to shift. Also, not be afraid to say, what, it's okay for us not to go down this path because the risks are higher than the gains.
Right, but that's challenging, right?
Right.
Because going back to the Betamax example, especially at the inception of a new technology, right? A new technology is kind of like a new baby, right? You're not really sure like what direction it's going to go in.
Exactly.
And if you do it too early, and this is like constantly like our fear with Congress is that there will be some like well-intended regulation that will prevent some extraordinary new innovation, some of the things that happen on the show floor, from ever being seen. And what we're always telling members of Congress when they're regulating on like any issue is just in your deliberations, think of it this way, right? Will a person starting her new company in her dorm room be able to comply with this?
Right.
Should be your benchmark.
And maybe we want to try to find ways to help people do that. And even if you have that innovation and you release it, like you're saying, give them that room. But you have to also be able to pivot and say, oh, you know what, we're seeing this here.
Right.
Let's work with that.
When there's a demonstrated problem.
Let me ask you this, because I just think you're really, I want to say how grateful I am that you're here today and having us here. This is riveting. Tell me about the one thing when you first came to CES, the first time when it was Consumer Electronics Show. Tell me what that one thing was like aha moment for you when you came, and tell me what your aha moment is here today.
It's actually it's interesting, right? The show has changed radically since I it has changed and evolved as the technology industry has changed. When I was first here, it was mostly TVs. Like I don't even think they were HD TVs at that point. They were like big cool TVs. And now it is as technology has kind of percolated into every aspect of our lives. It is now, it is robotics, it's healthcare, it's transportation, it's automobiles, it's the self-driving drone taxi that's outside, which would be very helpful in Washington traffic.
Yes,
right,
and in LA traffic as well.
Right. But it's so the technology has just like changed and evolved just in a dramatic and head-spinning way, in a good way. But what has not changed is the ability of this technology to impact and improve human lives.
What I really hope is that we can all work in partnership as we move forward, because it affects all of us in different ways. And we can actually, with that innovation, if we all communicate with each other, we can innovate in a way that helps to create and build and support. So I think it's really exciting, and you are doing incredible work, and I can't believe you've been doing it for this long. It shows your commitment to the future.
Right. Well, I'm so happy to be here, and thank you for the astounding things that you and your members produce. It delights the world.
Well, that was really interesting and amazing stuff. Terrific interview, as always, Madam President.
Thank you.
To help unpack a little bit of that and to make sense of how all of this technology impacts our members, we are now joined by Mr. Duncan Crabtree-Ireland, who is the Chief Operating Officer and General Counsel of SAG-AFTRA.
And a CES veteran. I have to say he was there.
Yes, and a longtime colleague of mine and someone who we all have come to recognize has an extra computer chip inside of his head. So,
well, I was hoping to get it upgraded while we were at CES this year, but
that'll be next year.
That's next year, yeah.
Right.
So much of this is relevant if you think about the professionals we represent, whether they are broadcast news journalists or recording artists or performers in a number of different categories. Our members are on the front line with the work that they do and the innovations that are then embedded in that work, particularly when you're thinking about broadcast news journalists and how now a single individual has to be responsible for going out and capturing the visual as well as the audio of a particular event, and then they are also responsible for translating that in real time for an audience and writing constantly, blogging, and keeping up with an ever-expanding social media audience. All of that technology has really impacted their work. The same is true for performers and for recording artists, and then for the way that their work is distributed, the way that all of that work finds its audience. And so I'm very curious about what you saw and any prognostication for the way that that may impact the livelihoods of our membership.
Absolutely. I think we should start off by just saying the fact that we see or recognize that technology is happening doesn't mean we necessarily like it, doesn't mean it's necessarily something we would want to happen. But one of the lessons that I think people have learned is fighting the technology is not the answer that brings success. Understanding the technology, understanding the change that's coming, and adapting to it is the path to success.
That's right.
Well, that's why we're trying to get involved with it. We're not only reaching out to CES, we're looking at different parts of the industry or creators.
Absolutely. So if we talk about, first of all, just a framework, one of the biggest things at CES, and it's been a couple of years in progress, is the evolution of and deployment of 5G technology. And the reason why this is going to be important to our members, I think, number one, is the throughput that 5G enables for mobile devices is a generation ahead of what we have right now. The throughput for 5G is about 1.5 gigabytes per second. So anyone who knows the speed of a device that they're dealing with, if you have really fast internet at home, you might have 300 megabytes per second. So this is 5 times faster than probably the fastest internet that most people ever have at home. If you're talking about a mobile device now, fast speed on a mobile device right now might be about 50 to 60 megabytes per second, which means for the kind of technology that our members are involved in creating, whether it's video games, whether it's other types of streaming media content, there's going to be a level of support for higher quality mobile applications than there's ever been before.
And for less money. So when we were there, there was a camera they had me try out. It was amazing. People can create their own virtual reality films, and it was an affordable cost to the layperson. So this is not, Disney being the ones to create virtual films or thinking about studios. This is at home in an affordable price. That changes everything.
It does. And we're witnessing some of this already, of course, which is our own membership, particularly the incoming generations of members. They don't come in frequently viewing themselves as one category or another. I'm coming in just to act, or I'm coming in just to sing or to record music or what have you. They see themselves in an entrepreneurial light. People come in and they say, I'm creative, I'm an artist, and suddenly all this technology is available to them to actually create, in addition to being in front of the camera or behind a microphone to record or to perform, and that changes everything.
Absolutely. And so I think, when you take that framework, then you start talking about some of the other technology. And David, you mentioned a few moments ago the reality, for example, for news broadcasters and others who need to create their own content. Sometimes they're required to shoot their own video, et cetera. There's quite a few new tech products that are designed to support that. Things like AI Camera People, which basically lets you use typically like a smartphone, but it could also be some more professional type level camera. and actually will control that camera for you so that you can have it in a remote location from you as a camera person might be, but it will pan and follow you. You can actually see some YouTube videos using this technology already in terms of unboxing videos, and that's a reality of facilitating self-production that can be good for certain people and maybe not so great for others, but it's a reality that's coming down the road.
Do you see that as being a net positive or a net negative for a broadcast news journalist, as an example?
Well, I think that's a complicated question, because broadcast journalists who are okay with the concept of being an MMJ, a multimedia journalist, doing a lot of self-taping, or who might decide to develop their own content, I think that'll be a real plus. Certainly for our members who are influencers or who are trying to do that kind of work themselves, yes, that's a huge plus for them. For other people who are more comfortable with or really like the more traditional approach to this, it's not going to be a welcome development that companies are going to be wanting to use this kind of technology to replace people who are doing it now.
Well, I spoke to Michael about that. Technology is exciting. You heard that in the interview. It is exciting, but it is a disruptor, right? It does change things, and it does make it a little frightening, because young people see, I think, where they fit in, how it can fit into their lives and utilize it. People who have not been using it and know traditional ways of working, it becomes uncomfortable because some of the things that they're used to doing that kind of defines in their minds their work is changing.
Absolutely. It really presents a challenge to those of us whose careers are focused on protecting people in this space and empowering people in this space, because it's absolutely essential that we keep up so that those for whom this is a net positive see a home, a professional home within the family of agreements and contracts that we have here at this union, and see the organization as a platform to support all of their endeavors and their efforts and their future. That needs to match with their relationship with SAG-AFTRA. And at the same time, for those for whom this is comfortable, the way that this technology rolls out, the way that corporate entities, big and small, will attempt to exploit their talent and exploit the professional labor that they have at their disposal in order to squeeze as much productivity as possible out of this trending technology. Our job is to make sure that our agreements keep pace.
That's when we start bringing the influencers in, talking about, we know that this is a place.
We have to understand it.
Well, because it boomed, right? But then people had no perception of how to control it.
It's a great example.
Didn't know, right? So this is, I think, part of this for me when I'm going in to, see these technologies, the 3D camera doing the holograms, and I'm looking at that thinking how that's going to affect for instance, our sound recording artists, right? Concerts that you can see, you're performing here, but you can see it in China. You can go to anywhere in the world and see that concert as if it's real, because that was incredible technology. But we have to find a way that's good for us to know it exists, because we're going to protect our members for that.
Yeah, and actually holograms, another application of holograms that we saw developing this year at CES that I think can maybe provide an opportunity for some of our members is actually the use of holograms for advertising technology, and particularly to put motion video in places that it is not currently feasible to do. Like right now, if you're going to put a moving picture up somewhere, you either have to be able to put up an LED wall, you have to be able to put a large screen, you have to be able to project something. But there's actually technology that's just been developed where they can actually use a very small rotating device to essentially create a holographic image somewhere where they don't need the ability to put up those big screens. Yeah, it was pretty impressive. And I think the exciting part about that is, developing new areas where human beings can be involved in conveying advertising messages outside of the internet is a really good thing.
I mean, if you think about the commodification of all of the space that right now is either private space or common space, so that everywhere we go is going to look like Times Square. And if it turns out that we can commodify those spaces and make sure that advertisers can get to you anytime, anywhere on their own schedule, that is an entirely new regime. I mean, the rules around that are going to have to be so nuanced and new.
But you know what? When you say rules, and I talked about with Michael, because he does work with legislation, and I said, as technology is expanding so rapidly, will be potentially unexpected consequences. And how do you deal with those laws? And he was saying that laws are not the way to go. And I actually immediately introduced him to Duncan. And I said, let's build that relationship. Let's talk about that because that was important. But Duncan, can you talk a little bit about our relationship in terms of, legislation and how we're working that way?
Absolutely. And, it's to be expected. I mean, CTA is great. The fact they put on CES is amazing. They are a trade association, and their job is to think about the interests of the tech companies that are their members and that pay for their operations, right? So there are times when we're on the same page and there are times we're not. But in this case, where we talk about really access to digital imagery of performers, and I'm really glad you brought this up, Gabrielle, because one of the things I wanted to make sure we talked about is the level of 3D scanning technology has dramatically improved over the last couple of years. And one of the things we saw in Eureka Park at this very CES was somebody who's figured out a way to use the imaging cameras on an iPad or an iPhone to create a 3D digital scan of somebody. And why this is different, why this is new, is anybody who knows that when Apple came out with the iPhone 10, they incorporated something called Face ID. And to create Face ID, they use two different types of cameras. They use one camera, which is the regular image camera, and then they use an infrared camera that's actually basically does a map of your face, and then they combine that information in order to use it to unlock the iPad or whatever, right, for Face ID. What this person has figured out how to do is to actually take the image data from the infrared camera, combine it with that live image data, and instead of using it for ID purposes, use it to create a 3D digital image of your face or potentially your whole body, et cetera. And that's technology that until now had been much more expensive, much more inaccessible. And that is an area where we're extremely concerned. And in fact, we are engaged in discussions with the major studios and networks about the use of scanning technology as it relates to performers. But obviously, this is something where anybody out in the public could potentially use that type of scanning technology. And so we have bills pending right now, one in New York and one in California, both of which are designed to protect performers' digital image rights. And one of the big things that we're worried about right now is called deepfake porn. And I don't think we want to get into a deep discussion of that right now, but basically this is where people can convincingly take someone's face and transpose it onto someone else's body. That is a real concern, and it's not something that simple contract negotiations or public education campaign is going to stop. That's the kind of thing that does call out for legislation, and I think that's why a lot of people who wouldn't normally be super excited about that kind of legislation are saying, yeah, this is something that really needs to happen and it needs to happen now.
When you're talking about the fact that we're dealing with this in New York and California right now, can you talk a little bit about what is it you need if you were to make a wish, right, from members? What are things that we can do to help support those efforts that are going on?
Sure. Well, number one, I think, is stay engaged with the union. The legislative process is different in both of those states, and so the bills that we have are in different current statuses. But what I can say is when the time comes, we will reach out to the members and ask them to contact their legislators to make sure that their representatives understand how important this is to them. And when we make that call, we really need their support. And it can make a huge, huge difference. In other areas, not specifically in this area because those bills are still pending, but in other legislative areas, it turns out that our members have a huge impact. And I've been told by outside lobbyists for other organizations that legislators have commented to them, they have noticed when SAG-AFTRA puts out a call to our membership and the membership responds, it's extremely powerful and can make a huge difference. So I'd say the main thing is stay engaged with us, keep informed, and be willing to reach out when needed to help make that change happen.
I want to add just one other thing. I'd actually like people to report to us. So what's happening, I think technologies that are advancing, we might not even recognize right away. We know what we see when we go to CES or when people share with us. But if people don't share with us, there are certain technologies that are coming out right now and being utilized or will. And if our members, when they're on a set or when they're in an environment that, requires a performance, whatever, they're to be able to say, this is something new. I've not seen this before. Share it with the union because people think that the union is something separate, but we are the union, right? So that information helps to inform so that we can go and support even the legislative aspect of what we're doing.
These are great points, and our Government Affairs unit reports into Duncan, and you all have really been doing terrific work in both Albany and Sacramento and in D.C., and frankly, we just had a great victory down in South Africa where we help protect rights for performers down there that will accrue benefits for performers worldwide. And so this fight really is a global fight, and it's important that we are in all of these places and as informed as we are.
Because we're part of FIA.
FIA is the International Federation of Actors. It's a worldwide representative organization of performers.
I want people to know that we are involved in conversations because we're a part of FIA. We sit and we talk on a global level about these kind of issues so that we can inform each other because our members are worldwide.
Right.
And we know that the laws that we're working on here, there will be a ripple effect. We want to make sure that it touches other countries because our work is everywhere and our members are everywhere.
That is very true. And in fact, other organizations, because we are by far the largest performers union in the world, they look to us for that type of leadership. We have a deeper bench of researchers and ability to actually understand what's going on and to translate that for others. And so that participation with others around the world is really important.
Well, I was going to say also in terms of the technology we've been talking about, sometimes things look like they're going to be really big or really influential, and then a few years later you realize maybe not so much. To me, one example of this, and it's not maybe the perfect example, but it's an interesting one, I think, is VR. About 5 years ago, 6 years ago, everyone was all about virtual reality. Everyone thought everyone was going to be walking around with these virtual reality headsets on, and virtual reality has been successful and it does have its place, but what it's actually been supplanted by, I think now in terms of the future really is AR or augmented reality. And for anyone who's not sure what that is, if you've ever heard of a little game called Pokemon Go, that would be probably the first introduction that many people had to augmented reality. That's where basically, the real world and a fictional world are superimposed upon each other so that in the case of Pokemon Go, you see a Pokemon, which is a little monster character, existing in your real world and you interact with that monster in this game. But it also has a lot of other applications for advertising and for other types of things that our members can be involved in. For example, there's another small little company you may have heard of called IKEA that has an app where you can actually use AR in order to place furniture into your real life home so you can see what a couch would look like in your living room by using this technology. And it's also extensively being used in more performer-centric video games. So we're expecting further development of not only mobile games but also console-based games that use AR to combine the real world with potentially images and certainly voiceovers recorded by SAG-AFTRA members under our interactive media contract, and also just all types of interactive advertising. So I mentioned IKEA, but there's the ability when you combine it with geolocation to serve up very targeted, customized advertising using AR for people, making sure that performers are well positioned to take advantage of those additional opportunities in those fields is, I think, something that we're definitely going to be looking at.
Such an important point for the substantive reasons that you talk about, but also just thinking about the institutional positioning that we are always focused on. Even in this conversation, I can see myself listening to this as a possible threat. But the institutional position that we need to have is to take advantage of these opportunities. These present work opportunities for our members.
It's our work.
That's
it's
right.
our work. No matter how it is utilized, it's our work.
Absolutely.
We have to remember that.
I do want to put a plug in for our new commercials agreement, where we took this on directly, and there is something called addressable commercials and addressable technology, and we embedded that and other types of technological advancements in the agreement itself to ensure that there is a pathway for our members to be able to earn a professional living while they are engaged in all of these new trends.
David, I think it's important for you to explain addressable because not everybody who's listening really knows what that is.
Well, just the idea that an advertisement can be pinpointed to a particular household. So whereas it used to be that the same ad would go to everyone receiving the broadcast signal for ABC in primetime across America, now you can have multiple different advertisements, and Gabrielle's going to get one that has one type of individual that's right, and it fits the profile of Gabrielle. Duncan's going to get a second one. David's going to get a third one from the same advertiser trying to hawk the same wares. Right. And we will all get something different. And as that increases, again, our job is to make sure that our contracts accommodate that, which we were able to do in this latest round of negotiations.
So I have to say, in the commercial negotiation, just because you mentioned this, it was one of the most exciting, for me, negotiations, because I felt that it was the most creative. We in this were able to really look at how has our industry changed. Right. Let's not pretend to be negotiating a contract for an industry that's not the same as it was when the contract first was created. And in the idea that the members were able to come together and to really visualize and see what's happening instead of just holding on to what they know, made this, I believe, will be a major shift for us in what's going on with commercial.
And it is set to allow for testing and innovating. It doesn't replace the contract. It allows us to dip our toes into the water and to really understand at a deeper level how all of this is going to play out. So,
can we talk about music for a minute?
Yes. Sure.
You know, it's close to my heart. One of the things we saw was modular musical instruments, so like guitars, for example, cellos, other types of musical instruments that can actually be taken apart into very small pieces, right, and just carried in a backpack or something like that, then reassembled
it's amazing,
and played.
Yeah.
And so for example, for our singer-songwriter members who have to go on the tour or on the road, or even just want to be able to practice or to work on stuff while they're traveling, having the ability to take that and not have to carry on a guitar case everywhere they go, but to take a small package as part of their carry-on luggage is something that's pretty exciting.
Did you find anything that allows people with no musical talent to actually make good music?
Well, yes, David. It's called AI. It's coming. I'll let you know when it's ready for prime time. But as I'm sure you both know, AI is also present all throughout CES. AI is something that a lot of people are really concerned about where it's leading us. But for the moment, until the machines take over, AI has got application across a whole bunch of things, including things like taking better photographs if you're not a photographer, making your voice sound better if you're singing karaoke, whatever the case may be. There's a lot of applications for AI, and we see that. And again, that goes back to what we were talking about before, the importance of having legal regimes in place and having contractual regimes in place to protect people from the abuse of things like AI or the abuse of various kinds of tech.
I really have a concern about the human endeavor right now to remove our natural flaws, to remove a piece of what makes us human, which is the imperfections, out of our daily life through these technological innovations and the setting up of an expectation that we don't have to make mistakes. We don't have to have imperfections. There are ways to clean all of that up. And I wonder about the impact that will have on the art of being human and the craft.
I say to my kids all the time, our perfection is our imperfection.
Yeah,
and I think that there is a real beauty to that. I think people are more interested when we talk even about doing this podcast. They want to hear a real conversation, right? Instead of something
that's technically perfect.
Because they want to hear the real, they want to feel it. And I think that's the same in everything we do. That human element, I would hate to see us lose that.
Yeah.
I know we're low on time, but I think there's two more things we should talk about if we can.
Let's go for it.
So I'm sure you both are familiar with and probably know quite a bit about blockchain.
Sure.
Most people think about blockchain as relating to cryptocurrencies, so like Bitcoin, for example. But there's a whole bunch of other applications for blockchain. And one of the things that was actually on display at CES, less so display because you can't actually see it, but being explained and being discussed, was the question of how blockchain can be used for rights management in our industry. And this is especially true for the audio side of the industry, but it can also be true for the audiovisual side of our industries as well, where in the audio side, there is a huge problem with a lack of consistent data, verifiable data to use to do things like make royalty payments and to determine who has the rights to things when you need to go and get rights. And so there are a number of vendors, including big companies like IBM, that are in the process of putting together blockchain solutions to allow what is in essence an open source database of rights management that's verifiable. And the point of using blockchain, which is really what blockchain fundamentally is it's a way of publicly providing information while securing it so that people can't tamper, or they can detect if there's been any tampering with the underlying data. And so the idea is you could potentially host a database of rights information publicly while still ensuring that it wasn't tampered with by anyone, but collecting this information from all of the different rights holder sources. So it's in its early stages, but it's something that could have a significant impact on our members, and I think it's just worth knowing about.
Talk about how you visualize that impact.
Well, just as one example, there's a number of organizations that distribute royalties to our recording artists and singers. Those entities typically each create their own proprietary database of who sings on certain tracks, who owns the rights to certain tracks, et cetera. And then those databases are used to distribute royalty payments. But the process of sort of duplicating that data, creating those databases, sometimes they don't agree with each other. Sometimes there's a dispute and you don't know where money should go. It creates a impediment to the free flow of that money to its ultimate intended recipient, which is the performer. So anything that streamlines that process, makes it less expensive, and makes it happen faster is, a huge benefit to our members. So it's that kind of thing that, it won't be sexy.
I think it's very interesting. You know what I'm thinking about? ID and commercials.
It's similar to that in concept. I mean, for blockchain, they call it a distributed ledger. And one way to think about it is an Excel spreadsheet where once you put information in, you can't change it because it goes out to a million different computers and they're all watching each other, and therefore it's not a central database. It's like everybody sees everybody, and so no one gets to cheat. And that way, when initial rights go down, everybody has access to it. It's not unlike what you have when you pinpoint an ID to a particular ad or a particular commercial, although even there, the ID comes from a proprietary source and then goes into a system. So even that is not fully transparent. But blockchain is supposed to be fully transparent. I'm surprised, earlier on, not very long ago, the word on blockchain was that it could not – blockchain is about transactions. And it could not actually handle, because it involves so many different computers and so many different databases, it could not actually handle fast action. And then you hear that these major companies and banks are looking to use it. And so once it goes mainstream, if it works, it really transforms the way that people are able to have an expectation of what information they have access to and how to verify it, and whether or not any of that's going to continue to be held in a private database as to all of it being public. I think it is sexy.
I was going to say, I think that's sexy.
It is, yeah.
I think that's really
right.
sexy.
Gabrielle, you were not alone, and we, SAG-AFTRA, were responsible for additional parties to go to CES, and for some of them for the first time. And we kind of glossed over the fact that you chair the Future of Work Commission for the AFL-CIO, which is really a tremendous position if you think about labor trying to figure out what is next. And of course, the gig economy plays a big piece in the mindset of how to think about the future of work, and we are at the center of the gig economy in many ways.
Well, we are the gig economy.
Yeah,
right? Well,
in many ways, sure. So you want to, just as we close out, can you talk a little bit about the folks who came with you? And
we had leaders from all different unions around the country. The reason that we went there, and we've gone to Carnegie Mellon, and we're going to continue reaching out in terms of future of work, is that in order for us as a labor movement overall to be relevant, we have to actually be aware of the changes occurring and adapt to them. And if we don't go out and look at what's changing and we're not preparing our workforce becomes obsolete. So I believe that we as a union and unions in this country, we have a strong place for workers. We are a place for people to have protection and to, be able to work with dignity, but we have to be relevant. We have to be able to help them transition. We have to see what's coming up. I want to say it was a really mind-opening thing when I talked afterward to some of the leaders from different unions. I think at first, before we went out, there was like, I don't know if I want to go. And when they went and came back, what they shared and what they saw gave them vision. So I think that's what this is about. When we go to see this technology, it gives us vision. It's exciting to be actually working with Future of Work, with the AFL-CIO. I think that it's, again, I think that unions in this country have an important place. And the way for us to really make sure that we are able to maintain strength and to really bring in the workers and to really be relevant is for us to see what's taking place.
Can I just say that, as a CES veteran, we've been probably the only union that I'm aware of who's been there consistently year after year. And to see these labor leaders present was amazing because, whether you like it or whether you don't like it, the fact is CES is a window into what's next. And to my way of thinking, any labor union needs to be looking at that.
It's really great. So, Duncan, you've been an enlightening and terrific guest. Thank you for joining us on this podcast.
It's been so fun to join you in this. It's great. Thanks.
I hope you all, stay connected to the union. We're going to be asking for support. We need to speak up. We need to understand and be educated about what's taking place because it affects our work, and that means it affects our families and our futures.
Collective action. It's the only way that we can actually protect ourselves as the world moves forward.
Right. So together we do that.
Together we do that.